Knowledge, experience, wisdom. Philosophy, initiate that philosophy, master it. Mind, body, soul, thinking, doing, being, learning it with your head, applying it with your hands, knowing it by heart. And this is the journey of knowledge.
The principle of neuroscience says that nerve cells that fire together wire together. You keep thinking the same way, making the same choices, demonstrating the same habits, creating the same experiences that stamp the same networks of neurons into the same patterns, all for the familiar feeling called you. And you do that for 10 years on end, you're going to begin to hardwire certain patterns in your brain that becomes your identity. And by the time we're 35 years old, it kind of becomes fixed, right? And psychology used to say that you can't change that, but we now know that you can. So then that kind of box in the brain, that is the habit of ourselves. It's we're 95% of the time running a series of programs. So then sitting and doing the work, we have to become disentangled from those programs. And so the moment you decide to do something differently or make a new choice, what most people don't want to face is that discomfort. And that discomfort, that uncertainty, that lack of predictability, that unknown is what people are afraid of, because they'd rather live in guilt. At least they can predict who they're going to be than take a chance in possibility. So when a person begins to understand this and you say, well, how long have you been this way? And they say, I've been like this for 35 years. And you say, why 35 years? Because 35 years ago, I had this one event. Well, the stronger the emotion you feel from the reaction from that event, the more altered you feel inside of you, the more the brain narrows its focus and freezes the image and takes a snapshot. And that's called a memory, right? So then forget the memory. Just overcome the emotion, because it's the emotion that keeps you anchored to the past. So that sounds really good theoretically, but when you step out into that unknown, into that void, the body really is in a habit. And when a habit is when the body becomes the mind.
So if your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel, and it is, yes or no, and you stop thinking the same way, and nerve cells that no longer fire together, no longer wire together, every place where one neuron connects with another neuron is called a memory. So as you begin to unfire and unwire, you prune the very circuits in your brain that are connected to the old self. And the memory of the old self begins to mutate, begins to change. So then you would say, where is that memory stored? And it's stored in the soul now as wisdom, because you're no longer that person. Yes or no? And if you could no longer behave the same way, and nerve cells that no longer fire together, no longer wire together, and pruning is part of biology, you don't use it, you lose it, then your memory of the old self would begin to change. And that is a biological death in the beginning that is uncomfortable for a lot of people. If you're no longer feeling the same emotions that keep you connected to the past, and you keep inhibiting that process, the body will be craving the chemicals in the beginning because it's been conditioned that way. It's been addicted. It's the mind. And it's anticipating events and the emotions from those events, and you're putting the brakes on. And that's uncomfortable. And you got to stay conscious, and it takes an enormous amount of energy. And you're no longer signaling the same genes and producing the same hormones. And your body is no longer being influenced by your mind in the same way. And sometimes the mind is the biggest enemy to the body. And you're inhibiting that process. And the body, which has become the mind, wants its way. And it's uncomfortable to change. And you got to be able to be greater than that to truly change. And everybody that's changed has come up against that feeling. And they almost make the same choice, and they don't. And they're so glad that they did. And it takes an enormous amount of energy and awareness to do that. So as the old self deconstructs, because you have the free will to decide who you want to be on a moment-to-moment basis. And if your life isn't changing and you want to change your life, you got to change. And now you are playing the game, and you are now saying this personality this person that I've become, I'm in the habit of being it, and I want to become somebody else. And the more you learn about love, the more you learn about life, the more you learn about possibility and potential, the more you become aware of it, there are more possibilities, and knowledge is the thing that gives us that. And so the old self is a memory like another lifetime. Like, you can remember it, but you're no longer interested in it any longer because it no longer defines you. How many people understand what I'm talking about? So then the biological death of the old self is crossing a river of change, and you got to stay with it long enough to become somebody else. And you think it's about wealth, you think it's about health, it's about who you become. The people who become somebody else, they see dramatic changes in their health and in their lives. And they can't find the words to be able to explain it. But it's practical, though. If you truly want to change your life, you have to change yourself. You would have to be conscious of your thoughts and aware of your actions and familiar with those emotions, and you would never fall from grace. And if you did, you would stop and self-correct. If you truly were interested in evolution, and if you said to me, I lost it because of that person, I'd say to you, back to the unconscious program of allowing your environment to control how you feel and think. You got two choices. Stay there for another 6 hours, or pause and change your energy. Change your energy and get back to the emotions of your future and the feelings of your future. It's a much better place to be.
You know, one of the most important things is it's so much easier to forget this information than to...
Stop. Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior? Before you answer,
and to remember it, even me, you know, I have to say to myself, okay, Joe Dispenza, what do you know? And take a moment and just set down my cell phone and disconnect from everything and really have a thought, like, and keep reconstructing the model in my mind. It's so important to do that, because if we can understand the what and the why, and the how gets easier, then we assign more meaning and more belief and more intention behind it. And if you have to say, okay, if I'm living by these emotions that are familiar to me, then I'm signaling the same genes in the same way. Okay, now I have to be conscious of not feeling that way, and you have to make a different choice. And the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before, because the moment you decide to do something differently and make a new choice, it's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to leave the known familiar world of the familiar emotions and thoughts and behaviors. The body, is the unconscious mind, is going to want to return back to what it knows, because we trained it that way. So it's a retraining process. So if the person says, okay, if I can marry a clear intention, I got to work on getting my brain more coherent. Okay, they got that in the formula. That'll be a good signal out. If I can slow my brain waves down, I can learn how to do that. I can get beyond my thinking analytical mind. I can enter the operating system of my autonomic nervous system, program that. Okay, if I can combine it with an elevated emotion, really practice trading that suffering or that pain for something else. Yeah, it may take me a little bit to feel that emotion, but I think if I keep working at it, I'll begin to change my emotional state. When I feel that emotional state, I'm not going to be thinking about the past. I'm going to be thinking about the future. So the thought and the feeling, the stimulus and response, the image and the emotion, is conditioning the body emotionally into the future. So the person says, okay, he said, or I read, or someone else said, the environment signals the gene. Okay, let me write that down. Environment signals the gene. Okay, I got to remember that. The end product of an experience in the environment is the emotion. Okay, if I'm feeling gratitude, and gratitude's emotional signature means I've just received something favorable or something wonderful just happened to me. If I can feel the emotion of gratitude before the event occurs, then my body would be so objective that it's living in that future. I would begin to change my gene expression. And the stronger the emotion I feel, the more I'm going to pay attention to the picture in my mind, and I'm going to be remembering my future. My brain and body are going to look like the event has already occurred before it happened. And if genes make proteins, and proteins are responsible for the structure and function of my body, and the expression of proteins is the expression of life, then I'm going to keep signaling these. I'm going to keep knocking on the door every day. And I don't care if my life is falling apart. I'm not going to fall to that familiar emotion. I'm not going to speak the same way. I'm not going to think the same way. What thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? And with intention and attention, I'm going to keep reviewing them till it becomes an automatic thought in my head, like you can. How am I going to be today? How am I going to be with my family? How am I going to be in traffic? How am I going to be with my coworkers? How am I going to be when I'm alone? and you start rehearsing who you're going to be. The brain in the present moment doesn't know the difference between the outer world and the inner world. It's the brain, what it's imagining looks real. And if we're present, the brain looks like you already did it. You're priming the brain. It's no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. You're there in place. Keep practicing that rehearsal in your mind. It's going to become automatic and you're going to start behaving like that person. Then you said, can I teach my body emotionally what this future feels like before it happens? If you could truly open your heart and truly feel that elevated emotion, if you kept practicing that, I promise you, you would feel more of that in your day and less of the other place. And meditation means to become familiar with. And how you think, how you act, and how you feel is your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's the game, right? So when that occurs, then it's no longer about the past and what happened to you and the story people tell about that. They're telling a story of their future. In fact, they're more in love with their future than they are with their past. They believe in the future more than they believe in their past. And I think that when we believe in ourselves, we believe in possibilities. And when we believe in possibilities, we have to believe in ourselves. And showing up every day means you must believe it's true. When you stop showing up, then you don't believe it's true any longer. And enough people that have that kind of conviction literally step into a new body. They step into a new life. They step into a new future. And I hope that becomes the new normal.